with that, we will get the show started. I'm going to pass the screen over to our slide controller and introduce Stacy Landrum, who is the team lead for the Capstone team. And as soon as we get that started, we'll get on with the threat briefing. So over to you, Justin and Stacy.
Thank you, Mark, and good morning. Welcome to Exposing Amadey. So in this presentation, we'll delve into a recent incident that exemplifies how our 418 intelligence training has helped us expose a devastating cyber threat, starting with a URL containing deja vu malware that links to the Amadey Botnet. What follows is a testament to our training and using intelligence reports to discover real-time threats. As we walk through this incident, we will explore the URL analysis methodologies employed, starting with defense, a real-time global threat learning feed. It is a compelling narrative of how a well-coordinated team with coaches and being armed with real-time global threat intelligence helped identify a significant cyber threat. And this incident not only showcases our capabilities, but also serves as a valuable case study for enhancing our cybersecurity skills moving forward. So without further ado, let us delve into the heart of the incident and understand how we responded to a real-time global cyber threat. Now, Ibrahim will start off describing how we use defense to start our analysis. Ibrahim.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as we've all known, defense is a kind of intelligence network to aggregate potentially malicious URLs from various security vendors to be searched further on. So we began our learning by using this URL as a primary means of a cyber attack, just to look for some kind of suspicious indicators within the URL itself. So looking at this URL, we can see that this URL has been defunct. So which shows it has no kind of TLS, and this looks like a kind of insecure protocol address. So it looks somehow suspicious. So in this URL, that has been identified as potentially malicious, and we can see a few of these indicators. And the URL has been defunct, as I said earlier, and it's like we are just trying to avoid accidentally opening the page if someone were to click on it. So the URL uses the kind of non-secure HTTP protocol instead of the secure HTTPS protocol. It also makes use of an IP address instead of a kind of a human readable domain name. And some kind of navigating to this URL, we initiate some kind of an attempt to download an executable file named test10.exe. So in this presentation, you will see how defense is used as the starting point for URL analysis, which led us to confirm that test10.exe is an executable file, and it has a malware, and it's attributed to some kind of URL to a global malware distribution campaign for the Amadey Botnet. So yeah, I'll be transferring to Selena to analyze more regarding the tools.
Thank you, Ibrahim. One of the benefits of the defense platform is that it gives us a direct link to urlscan.io. This was the first tool that we used to analyze suspicious and/or malicious URLs. This tool is used by cyber professionals on a daily basis. There are various ways that attackers try to get in users to download and run malicious files, but the primary method used is phishing emails. URL Scan is a hub for analyzing phishing events, and that was its role during our Capstone project. URL Scan makes links available to a number of other external entities. The URL Scan results provide information that exists on the associated URL's website. This includes domains and IPs contacted, as well as items such as scripts and files. It allows a look at a website and its contents without navigating to it in the browser, which could potentially infect a computer. It is important when investigating potentially malicious websites that you're careful not to inadvertently navigate to them and become a victim. With the help of the coaches, we learned to use many of investigative and open source intelligent tools, or OSINT. A few of these external resources include Google Safe Browsing, which gives users a warning when they attempt to navigate to dangerous websites, Cisco Talos for filed IP and domain reputation information, Virus Total for various reports from a variety of antivirus vendors, Joe Sandbox, which contains a very complete and detailed report about the detonation of malware, a detailed analysis of every action the malware takes, and the mapping of the malware's behavior to MITRE TTPs. The coaches walked us through the use of these tools, which allowed us to hunt down threats and uncover critical information to do a deeper dive as to the credibility of a URL. We were shown how to analyze URLs by using a checklist. This is where we would take each element of the URL and look for anomalies. One of the key elements to look for when analyzing a URL is whether or not there is an executable file or document as part of it. Executable files and documents may have malicious code that is designed to execute hostile actions on the targeted system. When the file or document is malicious, it can be in various forms, such as viruses, worms, trojans, or ransomware. If the file is downloaded and run, this is where the problems begin. The starting point of any URL investigation is taking a look at the IP address. On the next slide, you will notice that it's associated with the Ukraine, but there's more to the story. Using the investigative tools previously mentioned, we were able to conduct a thorough analysis of both the IP address and the autonomous system number, referred to as ASN. The base IP address shown on the screen is a part of a wider range of 256 IP addresses. It has been flagged by security vendors on Virus Total as malicious, and also observed in a command and control panel for the Amadey malware. According to the Whois domain tool, the URL and associated IP address was created on April 13, 2023, and last modified on April 18th, just 5 days later. This domain is registered to a location in Stockholm, Sweden, while the controlling organization's location is in the Ukraine. The autonomous system number is a block of IP addresses assigned by the International Assigned Numbers Authority. This particular ASN is assigned to a network operator of what's called RIPE, the RIPE region, which is one of 5 regional registries. The RIPE service region consists of countries in Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Central Asia. Alltalk is owned by Danielle Yevchenko and has a reputation on many abuse reports for hosting malicious domains. Many of the domains are created as phishing attempts to steal users' credentials by replicating logon pages on social media, for dating websites, and retail sites as well. The ASN also has ownership of various IPs in Russia, as you can refer to in our appendix. We also discovered numerous malicious files were hosted on this IP, which my colleague Mafi will touch on.
Thank you, Selena. The last major step in investigating the URL is to analyze the payload it will download. We've learned how to use several tools to conduct URL analysis, as our cohort was very hands-on. Here's a summary of the results from 2 tools used in our investigation without getting too technical. The first tool is Virus Total. It's a service that analyzes submitted URLs for potential malicious content using multiple antivirus engines and detection tools. It's widely used to quickly assess potential threats. The second tool is Joe Sandbox. It's an advanced automated malware analysis platform designed to evaluate suspicious files and URLs in a safe environment by simulating a real-world scenario. It exposes malicious activities and delivers comprehensive threat reports. Now let's get into the file analysis findings. We see here the URL we're investigating, and the test10.exe is the file it downloads onto the user's system if the URL is clicked on. And on Virus Total, we found a staggering 62 out of 72 security vendors flagged this file as malicious. This high detection rate raises an immediate red flag. The primary threat categories associated with this file are Trojan and ransomware. Virus Total analysis also revealed some of the contacted URLs, domains, and IPs are flagged as malicious too. Now, moving on to our Joe Sandbox analysis. Joe Sandbox has very extensive findings report, as mentioned earlier, but we'll highlight a few. So the file received a perfect score of 100 and the confidence level at 100% of maliciousness. This shows the tool's certainty in its diagnosis. It also identified associations with two types of malware known as babook and deja vu. Both have a well-documented history of targeting various systems, further substantiating the malicious nature of the file. The sandbox found the file rights and notice, which could be in the form of an HTML or text file. This is often an indicator of a ransomware attack, where victims are provided instructions on how to pay or recover their files, further solidifying our ransomware suspicions. The file in question was observed modifying existing user documents. This behavior is a hallmark of ransomware, where files are encrypted or altered to be held hostage. And lastly, malicious sample from the file was detected. So as we've seen, the evidence from both analytical tools is clear and conclusive in showing the file poses a significant concern that requires further action. And now Raphael will show how we learn to detonate the payload to see it all in action. Raphael?
Thank you, Mafi. So good morning, everyone. So how do we verify we're working with a piece of malware? The only way we know how, we detonate it. With the guidance of our coaches, we were taught the software and skills needed to do this in a controlled and safe environment, allowing us to observe this piece of malware behavior once on a host. Beginning by retrieving the URL from the defense system and using the open source intelligence tools we were taught during the course, we were able to obtain a sample of the executable via the Malware Bazaar website. We verified the file's integrity using PowerShell commands to match SHA-256 values and verified we were working with the suspected malicious file, test10.exe. Next, using Detected Easy software, we're taught how to read human readable string values, and we're able to gather some information regarding the coding of the executable. For example, it was written in C++. We noted what looked like potential IPs it may contact, and other languages the software could run in for geographical location purposes. All information that could be potentially investigated further. We then went ahead and detonated the malware within a virtual machine running Windows 10, which we learned to set up. This is also while running a Linux virtual machine running Remnux OS for internet simulation. The purpose of the simulation was to avoid the malicious file leaving this sandbox network and affecting my own personal home network. Once running, we had software configured to run packet tracing logs and registry change logs to see how the malware would interact within this infected host and its attempt to reach out of this virtual network. We immediately learned that upon initial execution, the file attempts to download two more executables, build2.exe and build3.exe, which we learned came from two different sites hosting more malicious software when reviewing the Wireshark packet tracing logs. We also saw the file was attempting to send a HTTP GET request to a C2 command and control center site, awaiting instructions on what to do next once executed. This is all information we learned to investigate when reading these logs. Next, using the RegShot tool, we were able to determine that there were 111 registry changes created to the host system when comparing pre- and post-detonation snapshots. We also saw scheduled task creations within the registry where the executable would be auto-detonated every 5 minutes indefinitely via a hidden copy of itself newly created within the C directory. Lastly, when we attempted to extract previous system log files, we noted that they were now formatted in a new encrypted extension .nzqw. Using a system search of the new extension, we were able to determine that over 72,000 files were affected in this attack. A README text file not encrypted found within the system leaves a ransom note stating where to purchase the group's decrypt tool, a price noted at $980 or $490 if you contact them within the first 72 hours. Their contact information, a unique identifier, is also left within this note. Watching the malware's interaction within these virtual machines, we were taught to set up creates a sense of urgency when looking at this as a real-world scenario any individual or company can be affected by. Given first-hand experience of watching registry changes completed within minutes, attempts to download more malicious software, the creation of hidden copies of itself, and ultimately the entire encryption of an infected host really drives the seriousness of how this malware and others like it can quickly compromise a single machine and open the door to an attack of an entire network. My colleague Stacy will next cover the connection of this one piece of malware to the Amadey Botnet.
Thank you, Raphael, for risking your computer to aid in our research. And here's where our research led. Now let's take a step back. I don't want to overload you with too much technical details, but visually you can see the connections that our team has built using the defense collaboration platform. So at the top, we have the results from the detonation. And Raphael already spoke to the knowledge and tool that allowed him to safely detonate malicious malware and observe its behavior. So immediately after he did this, he was able to revert his computer back to a safe state because of the training and coaching we received through 418 Intelligence. Now, this is not something we could have done 6 weeks ago. And below at the bottom of the map, we've used intelligence, starting with URL scan, to connect the original URL to a network of malicious IPs, which led to the Amadey Botnet, which is a group of computers which have been infected by malware and have come under the control of a malicious actor. The next stage of the analysis had to do with uncovering the rest of the story, and it brings us back to URL scan, where we learn more about the history of this IP. So on the next slide, we'll take a look at the original URL. So when examining the results from URL scan, we noticed the URL had been scanned 109 times, and this means that URL scan will track the IPs and the domains that the URL contacted. It will note the resources requested from those domains, as well as information about the page itself. So there were several URLs that hosted executables that either looked or were verified as suspicious or malicious. And a few URLs jumped out immediately. 2 of these were being flagged as well-known malware. A third leading to an ominous login page with only 2 input fields and an unlock button. The login page that is hosted on the same target IP featured the same logo of other well-known and documented Amadey C2 pages. A reverse image search led us to intelligence confirming the Amadey connection as referenced in Appendix 1. This C2 panel for the Amadey malware resolved to this IP address as of 2 months ago, signified it was still early in the campaign. And this is also signified by the virus total analysis that showed only 1 vendor flagged this particular IP as malicious. Further research noted that Amadey does not detonate malware if the victor's computer is on a Russian IP address. So looking at this, the second URL on the left, a directory called NASA on a Swedish IP registered in the Ukraine that has connections to Russian ASN would definitely raise a red flag, wouldn't it? So further research is definitely required since Amadey is a massively sophisticated botnet campaign serving up all kinds of malware. So it's important to search for threat intelligence, and Sharada will cover the indicators of compromise for the Amadey Botnet.
Thank you, Stacy. So what is an indicator of compromise, also known as an IOC? Imagine this. Your window is broken and you call the police to make a complaint. During their investigation, they found a rock outside of your house. What does it mean? It means nothing. It is just a rock. Now, they found a rock inside your broken window with my fingerprints on it. Now, the rock is not just a rock, but it is an indicator of compromise. In cybersecurity, an indicator of compromise is a clue that can tell us if a computer or a network is infected. They can help us identify and detect malicious activities or the presence of malware on your systems. Collecting them can help with detection and prevention, incident response, and threat intelligence. Antivirus and intrusion detection and prevention systems also use IOCs to create signatures that can be used to identify malware. By monitoring IOCs, organizations can identify and respond to malicious activity in real time, reducing the potential damage caused by malware. Analysts can also use IOCs to quickly identify the scope of an attack, its origin, and the affected systems. IOCs are commonly shared with the cybersecurity community at large. which helps organizations stay informed about emerging threats and trends and to proactively defend against new malware and attack techniques. After investigating everything about this, excuse me. After investigating everything about this initial IP address that we possibly could, using various open source intelligence tools, including URL scan, sandbox reports, and our own detonation of malware related to this suspected campaign in a controlled environment, we identified a large number of network-oriented, file-oriented, and signature-based IOCs, including 6 domains, 10 URLs, 21 SHA hashes for unique files. We added these pieces of information in defense as case notes to document our findings and create a larger picture of our investigation. Akela will discuss how we analyzed a major vendor's report on Amadey to map out a part of the botnet.
Thank you, Sarada. Good analogy with the rock. So one of our coaches shared a Darktrace report on Amadey with us because their SOC was actually looking at one of the related IPs that was recorded in defense. So based on this report, I wanted to touch on kind of how the Amadey attack works. Amadey Botnet has been used to distribute malware, steal information, and perform distributed denial of service attacks. And it's also been seen to be sold as malware as a service on the dark web for as little as $500. So first, the initial intrusion. This is when the victim clicks on a malicious link in a spam email, and then the first piece of malware is now activated and the attack begins. Amadey does not usually work alone. It partners itself with a loader malware that can hide inside pirated software, and it can also be sent as an attachment in phishing emails. So once the loader has executed its payload, it's then able to download additional malware, including Amadey. The next stage is the attacker needs to create a means of communication with the victim's machine. So Amadey will capture screenshots of the victim's network information and then send it out to the C2 to be reviewed by the attacker. The next stage, the infected device will continue to contact the C2. The attacker will send instructions to tell the victim machine of what's going to happen next in the attack. The C2 will respond with instructions to download additional plugins in the form of dynamic link libraries or even secondary malware info stealers. The fourth stage is where the reconnaissance and download of malicious files happens. This is where the malware will gather all the data in the victim's machine and download the next stage of the attack. Stage 5 is data exfiltration. This is the end goal of the attacker, sending all the harvested data out to themselves to potentially sell on the dark web or even ransom back to the owner for a quick payday. So my objective was to build as complete a picture as I could on the total maliciousness of the original URL. Does it stop at the domain? Is it the entire AS? Or does it go even further? So as was mentioned prior, Altawic UA is the AS that owns our domain. I wanted a deeper look into this AS, so I went on Hurricane Electric Internet Services to see what it consists of. I found that 5 out of the 7 IP blocks under the AS belong to the same entity. That's right, Daniel Yevchenko. I took that information back to URL Scan to see if this malicious file sharing goes outside our domain. I was taught the basics of Elastic String queries, which is like a search language that I can use to build my own filters to look through the URL Scan database and specify what I want to look for. So first, I wanted to filter the results by the AS, and then the Yevchenko-owned IP block that I want to look into, and I want to see if it's hosting any executable files on each block. A staggering amount of the IP blocks under this entity were found to be hosting various forms of malware and malicious files like Amadey. Next, I wanted to see if these connections also hosted the suspicious login page that we talked about earlier. As you can see on the slide, 192 hits just on this AS alone. So after reviewing my findings, it appears that this Yevchenko entity, it doesn't really restrict the hosting of malicious files on their domains. So this warrants further investigation and security measures until the provider can maintain a reasonable level of responsibility. The Darktrace report also listed a bunch of the IOCs that are known to be related to the Amadey campaign that they were looking into. So naturally, I wanted to see if any of those could be linked to our URL. I started filtering for each IOC that they published on top of filtering the URL URL info from before. I found the URI listed from the report hosted on our domain using the same IP address. So this confirms the presence of an Amadey C2 endpoint that's associated with our URL. I'm going to now pass it on to Esther so she can explain the rest of the malware details that we found.
Thank you. Today, I'll walk you through our comprehensive analysis of a recent cybersecurity incident. Our objective was to catalog all malware on a specific IP address. In response to real-time global threat alert from defense, our team successfully analyzed hundreds of URL and documents the malwares that were saved on each one. These URL were connected either by the same IP address, ASN, or were structured similar according to URL scan. The majority of malicious files were determined to be redline stealer, a remote access Trojan. Amadey is used often to distribute redline stealer along with the other malware we discovered. These structure similars URL were first observed in February 6, 2019. We can still observe activities and new files being served as of today ago. However, the specific IP had only been flagged by VirusTotal just once 2 months ago. Our team detected a sophisticated malware campaign spreading deja vu malware, a dangerous ransomware variant. We employ a multi-plunge approach, including sandboxing, URL analysis, open source intelligence, Wireshark analysis, to understand the threat, nature, and origin. Through sandboxing analysis, we confirm the presence of deja vu malware, which encrypt files, demand ransomware, and download additional information stealers. Our analysis linked the phishing campaign to the Amadey Botnet known for distributing malware, indicating a large-scale attack. This incident underscored the significance of the real-time global threat intelligence feeds like defense, and the effectiveness of training we learned from 418 Intelligence. My first-hand experience as part of the analyst team has showed the rapid escalation from investigating one suspicious IP address and URL host to uncovering this vast network of threats. It's incredibly rewarding to witness the practical impact of our training in the real world of cyber attack, especially when faced with current threat like the one we identified yesterday. The attempt at download of a DLL file directly from the Amadey playbook. Leave no doubt, this is an ongoing real-time attack. This experience provides a genuine glimpse into the challenging of combating cyber threat as they unfold. Preparing for major global campaign like the one we found require a standard way of describing attack across security professionals. And Madhavu will cover this. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. And I would like to talk a little bit about MITRE ATT&CK framework and some of the tactics that we identified during our analysis. For those of you who are not familiar with MITRE ATT&CK framework, it's a global knowledge base that was created by MITRE Corporation, which is a federally funded organization for research and development in cyberspace. MITRE ATT&CK framework can be used to model tactics, techniques, and procedures, which are commonly known as TTPs, that are used by the threat actors during an attack. As an analyst, it helps us to identify the behavior of the threat actors. MITRE ATT&CK framework also gives us a common knowledge as security professionals we can communicate with. The tactics in the MITRE ATT&CK framework are usually why a threat actor or a malware is doing what it is doing and what it aims to achieve from it. The techniques are how they are going to achieve that target. And the procedures outline specific implementation of the techniques that are documented in real-world attacks. It could be a specific command or a software used. Over the years, MITRE ATT&CK framework has become a standard in sharing threat-related information. I believe this sharing is really important because the more we share about the emerging and existing threats, the more all of us are aware about them and we can protect our systems better. So on that note, I would like to share some of the TTPs that we observed during our analysis. In the case of our sample deja vu, we found, even though we didn't directly observe it, it is known to gain initial access by tricking the user on clicking in a malicious link in a spam email and then downloading it. During the analysis of the malware, we also noticed that the malware queries the system to find out information about the operating system it is on. This is important because this information will then be sent to the command and control server from where the attacker is controlling the attack, and to download a next stage of malware, which was designed specifically for that operating system. To evade defenses, the malware under analysis created a copy of itself in a hidden folder and then created a scheduled task to run every 5 minutes. So even if the original copy was identified and destroyed, it can still execute itself. This is also persistence. During our detonation, we also observed that the malware made changes to allow itself to run every time the computer is rebooted. The final impact of this malware execution was encryption of the data and files. The encryption was done to extract ransom from the victims. In my personal opinion, this is one of the scariest techniques in MITRE ATT&CK framework, because in case if your data is not backed up, you might end up the data or might end up paying a large amount of fine or ransom. And even if you pay the ransom, there is no guarantee that you will get your data back. During our course, we also learned to identify the techniques used in an attack and map them to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. As an analyst, being able to map these TTPs with the MITRE ATT&CK framework allows us to identify the elements used in the cyber attack and then proactively apply mitigations or fixes to secure our systems. I will now hand over to Stacy, who will summarize for us the key ways in which our team grew during this experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Amadey. So in conclusion, the investigators started with a real-time threat feed from defense. Our team began with the integrated link to URL scan, and from there, we used open source tools and intelligence to guide our next move. It is very important in cyber threat analysis to look for research from others, and reports on this investigation confirmed our findings that Amadey is an active global campaign. Also, using malware analysis, what we were taught allowed us to identify the initial malware. Our colleague Akela is also developing a real-time URL scan search that will alert defense of future suspected Amadey hosts as they appear. This practical hands-on training and help from our coaches over the past 6 weeks has become invaluable to our cybersecurity career. So thank you for attending our presentation today, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, everyone.